For years, the idea of UFOs was treated like a distant fantasy, something relegated to the pages of science fiction or dismissed as overactive imaginations. But what happens when the world's most powerful governments start to acknowledge that something very real has been flying through our skies beyond any scientific explanation we have? This isn't just a story about aliens or spaceships. This is a story about a shocking encounter that made officials question everything they thought they knew about our skies. Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling and mysterious UFO encounters ever documented, involving Japan Airlines Flight 1628, November 17, 1986. Picture this. It's a cold, crisp afternoon high above Alaska, and Japan Airlines Flight 1628, a Boeing 747, is cruising through the sky. The crew, a seasoned pilot, first officer and flight engineer, thought they were just doing their usual job. The plane was packed with cargo, and it was supposed to be another regular flight from Paris back to Tokyo. However, something extraordinary was about to happen. At 5:10 p.m., Captain Tarouchi, with over 10,000 flight hours under his belt, noticed something unsettling out of his cockpit window. Two strange lights, glowing brilliantly in yellow and white, appeared behind the aircraft. They weren't just flying, they were racing ahead with impossible speed. In an instant, they stopped, and then they hovered, defying gravity, staying exactly 1 mile ahead of the plane, like something straight out of a science fiction movie. Now, this wasn't a fleeting glimpse. Captain Tarouchi wasn't alone in seeing this. First Officer Tarouchi and flight engineer Yoshio Tsukuba both saw the same thing. These objects were real. They weren't just some illusion or a product of stress. They were real, and they were keeping pace with the 747. So what does a professional pilot do when faced with something that shouldn't exist? He picks up the radio and calls in to ground control. Japan Airlines Flight 1628. We've detected two unidentified flying objects ahead of us. Please confirm if there are any other aircraft in the area, Captain Tarouchi reported. Ground control's response was calm, but ultimately unhelpful. No other aircraft should have been in the area, and yet there they were. Two massive objects, as large as the 747 itself, radiating light from numerous small ports, their centers dark as if opening a void in the sky. The objects seemed to move in ways that defied logic. They would zoom ahead only to stop and hover, their yellow-white glow so bright it lit up the entire cockpit. As the objects moved closer, getting within 150 meters of the plane, the heat from their radiance became unbearable. It felt as though the aircraft was flying directly through a furnace. Despite the tension in the cockpit, the object suddenly veered off, allowing the plane to continue its course. For a brief moment, Captain Tarouchi and his crew thought the strange encounter had ended, but it was only the beginning. 5 minutes later, two new objects appeared. These weren't the same dazzling yellow-white lights, but two soft blue lights, quietly hovering right in front of the aircraft's nose. At first, Captain Tarouchi thought his mind might be playing tricks on him. After the previous bizarre experience, the stress might have been getting to him. But no, he wasn't imagining. All three men saw the blue lights. But this time they weren't individual objects. They were the ends of something much larger, a massive black object, unlike anything any of them had seen before. The crew was now in real danger. At this point, Captain Tarouchi made a critical decision. He contacted ground control once again, asking permission to perform an evasive maneuver. He had no idea what they were dealing with, but he had to take action. With approval, he sharply banked the plane to the right. But the massive object didn't move. It stayed right behind them, mirroring their every move, as though it was attached to the 747 like a shadow. In a moment of growing urgency, ground control reached out to the United States Air Force. Military radar confirmed that there was, in fact, an enormous object trailing the plane, moving in ways that defied known technology. For the next 14 minutes, the object stayed locked in pursuit, and then, just as abruptly as it had appeared, it vanished from radar, leaving the crew and ground control stunned. At this point, Captain Tarouchi was just 270 kilometers from Anchorage Airport. He quickly guided the plane to a safe landing, but the unease from the encounter would linger for years to come. The moment the aircraft touched down, a small army of officials from the FAA, military, and other undisclosed agencies swooped in. The flight crew was quickly separated and interrogated about the strange events. What's remarkable is that, despite the isolation of each crew member during the interviews, their stories matched perfectly. Each described the same lights, the same strange movements, and the overwhelming sensation of heat and brightness. Military radar, civilian radar, and even the air traffic control recordings confirmed what the crew had reported. But the official response? Nothing that would bring any real answers to the public. Instead, the US government classified all materials related to the encounter. The crew never spoke publicly about what they had experienced. Captain Tarouchi, once a proud and seasoned pilot, resigned shortly after the incident. The rest of the crew vanished from the public eye. And for years, this mystery remained unsolved, with only fragments of the story slipping through the cracks. That is, until one day in 2001, a former FAA official by the name of John Callahan took the stage at a symposium in Washington, D.C., revealing the truth that had been buried for years. But we'll get into that in the next part of the story. This script continues by unfolding more of the mystery surrounding Flight 1628, examining the government's role, and weaving in real-world insights about UFO encounters and their implications for national security. As the story progresses, we'll dive deeper into the aftermath, including revelations from key figures and more unexplained events, ultimately leading to a conclusion that leaves the audience questioning everything they thought they knew about the skies. By the time Captain Tarouchi and his crew landed safely in Anchorage, the atmosphere at the airport had turned from one of routine landing procedures to one of hushed tension. Personnel from the Federal Aviation Administration, military officials, and others whose identities were never fully disclosed quickly surrounded the flight crew. There was no time to celebrate their safe landing. What they had experienced was far from ordinary. The crew was immediately escorted away and subjected to intense interrogations. The goal was clear: to find out what they had seen, what they had experienced, and whether it could be explained. But as the interviews unfolded, something remarkable happened. Despite being isolated from one another, the three crew members provided remarkably consistent accounts of the strange encounter they had faced high above Alaska. They described the same glowing yellow-white lights that moved with supernatural speed, the same eerie heat radiating from the objects, and the same massive black shape that pursued them. These were not the accounts of panicked minds or overactive imaginations. They were professionals who had seen something that defied explanation. Even more startling was the evidence gathered from radar. Civilian radar stations and military radar had tracked the same phenomenon during the encounter. The signals aligned with the times and movements reported by the crew. It wasn't just a matter of a few confused pilots. This was something that was observed and recorded by official systems. The radar images showed objects moving at speeds far beyond anything human technology could accomplish at the time. Yet, despite all of this compelling evidence, the US government remained tight-lipped. They couldn't just sweep the situation under the rug, but that didn't stop them from trying. Instead of releasing the information to the public, the materials collected, including radio communications, radar data, and even Captain Tarouchi's hand-drawn sketches of the UFOs, were sent directly to Washington for classified investigation. The government wanted to control the narrative, to bury the story before it could cause too much of a stir. But as we know, secrets have a way of coming to light. In the years that followed, Flight 1628 faded into obscurity. Captain Tarouchi resigned from his position, and his fellow crew members disappeared from public view. Media attention dwindled, and for over a decade, this bizarre encounter seemed destined to be forgotten. But in 2001, the truth began to emerge in a way that no one could have predicted. It came not from the crew members, who were still silent, but from John Callahan, the former head of the FAA's Accident Investigation Division. Callahan had been the one to oversee the investigation into Flight 1628, and in 2001, he decided it was time to share what he knew with the world. At a symposium called the Disclosure Project, which was held in Washington, D.C., Callahan revealed, the stunning details about the investigation into Flight 1628's encounter with UFOs. His revelations were enough to send shockwaves through the audience. According to Callahan, the radar data, radio transmissions, and Captain Tarouchi's sketches had all been sent to Washington immediately after the incident. Within days, a secret meeting had been convened, attended by high-ranking officials, from the FBI, CIA, and even advisors to President Reagan. Callahan's job had been to present all the gathered evidence, but when he did, he was met with a shocking response. The officials in the room didn't just dismiss the data as a fluke or a mistake, they knew what it meant. Callahan presented clear, irrefutable evidence that the objects detected on radar were not meteorological phenomena or glitches in the system. These were real, tangible objects, behaving in ways that defied the known laws of physics. And yet, rather than allowing this information to reach the public, all of it was seized. The materials were classified, and Callahan was forced to sign an oath of secrecy. But here's where things get interesting. Callahan had made a backup. He had secretly kept a copy of the evidence that the government wanted to bury. When Callahan took the stage at the 2001 symposium, he revealed this secret stash of documents, including Captain Tarouchi's hand-drawn sketches and radar data showing the UFO's impossible speeds. For the first time, the world saw the evidence that had been hidden away for years. It was undeniable proof that something had happened over Alaska in 1986, something that couldn't be explained away by conventional science or military strategy. But the revelations didn't stop there. As the world's media caught wind of the story, they turned their attention to Japan Airlines and the missing crew. The media tracked down Japan Airlines and tried to reach Captain Tarouchi for an interview, but their efforts were met with silence. The airline confirmed that Captain Tarouchi had resigned shortly after the incident, and despite numerous attempts to contact him, no one had been able to find him since. The first officer and flight engineer had also vanished, leaving behind only vague rumors and speculative theories. It was only when a rare interview with Captain Tarouchi surfaced that the public got a glimpse into the mind of the man who had piloted the aircraft through one of the most harrowing encounters in aviation history. In the brief interview, Tarouchi's voice trembled as he recounted his experience. What he had seen, he claimed, was beyond the realm of human understanding. "What I saw that day above the skies of Alaska was not something belonging to the world of mankind," he stated firmly. "And I am certain that it did not originate from this dimension. This was a powerful statement from a man who had spent decades flying planes and witnessing countless phenomena. For someone with such experience to make a claim like that, it left an undeniable impact. But even more revealing was the detail Tarouchi shared about the decision he made in the heat of the moment. Ground control had offered to send fighter jets to escort the plane, but Tarouchi declined the offer. At first glance, it might have seemed like a reckless decision, but in retrospect, it was an act of extraordinary presence of mind. Tarouchi knew that bringing in military jets would only escalate the situation. If the UFOs were hostile, a military confrontation could be disastrous. If they weren't, the government's intervention would likely lead to even tighter controls on the incident. So he chose silence, hoping that the strange phenomenon would simply disappear. And for a time it did. As we move toward the final part of this mysterious encounter, we'll uncover even more astonishing revelations about the government's role in covering up UFO sightings and the growing recognition of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. We'll also explore other chilling encounters that have taken place since Flight 1628, incidents that continue to raise more questions than answers about what's truly out there. It's a story that forces us to confront the possibility that we may not be alone in the universe, and the implications of that realization could be more profound than we ever imagined. Stay with us as we explore the next chapter of this ongoing mystery. As the years went by, the story of Flight 1628 seemed to fade into the background, but the truth remained, quietly simmering just below the surface. The official response to the incident was one of silence and dismissal. The US government had swept the encounter under the rug, offering only vague explanations like misidentifications of planets or simple radar errors. However, behind the scenes, the reality of what had occurred was far more complex. it wasn't. Until 2001 that we got the first real peek behind the curtain, thanks to the courage of John Callahan and others who felt compelled to reveal what had been hidden for so long. Callahan's revelations at the Disclosure Project Symposium were just the beginning. The story of UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, did not end with Flight 1628. In fact, it was just the beginning of a much larger story that continues to unfold today. The US government in recent years has been forced to acknowledge the reality of UAPs. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, released a long-awaited report detailing the investigation into 144 UAP incidents. The results were shocking. Out of all the cases investigated, only one could be identified as a balloon. The rest, 144 cases, remained completely unexplained. But what really caught people's attention were the instances where these objects demonstrated flight characteristics that defied the known laws of physics. For years, UFOs had been considered a fringe topic, something dismissed by mainstream scientists and brushed off by governments. But now the reality was undeniable. These objects were moving in ways that no human-made craft could. They were demonstrating speeds, maneuvers, and capabilities that we simply couldn't replicate. The release of the ODNI report marked a turning point in the conversation about UFOs. For the first time in history, the government was openly admitting that something was happening in our skies, something that was beyond our understanding. And it was clear that these phenomena were not just something to be brushed aside. They posed a significant national security concern. But the story of Flight 1628 isn't just about government cover-ups and radar data. It's about the personal experiences of those who witnessed the phenomenon firsthand. Captain Tarouchi, who had flown countless miles and encountered a variety of weather and aviation challenges, was deeply shaken by what he saw that day over Alaska. He wasn't alone. First Officer Teapuji and Flight Engineer Yoshio Tsukuba also witnessed the events and had their own personal realizations. They knew what they had seen wasn't a weather balloon, a flock of birds, or some trick of the light. They knew it was something far more significant, and even though the world never fully heard their side of the story until much later, their testimonies remained a powerful reminder of the events that transpired. One of the most compelling aspects of the Flight 1628 encounter was the strange behavior of the objects. Not only did they move in ways that defied the laws of physics, but they also emitted a heat and light that could be physically felt inside the cockpit. The heat was so intense that it felt as though the plane was flying through an oven. Imagine being a pilot in the middle of a routine flight and suddenly finding yourself surrounded by an object that seems to defy every rule of aviation. For Captain Tarouchi, the decision to turn down fighter jets for an escort wasn't just about avoiding escalation. It was about maintaining control in an otherwise uncontrollable situation. He understood that any military involvement would bring even more attention to the incident, making it harder for the crew to escape the consequences of what they had witnessed. But as much as the government may have tried to dismiss the incident, the truth continued to make its way to the surface. The release of military radar data, along with the FAA's own findings, showed that the objects seen by the crew of Flight 1628 were no figment of their imagination. The radar readings were clear. These objects moved in ways that couldn't be explained by any known technology at the time. They would appear out of nowhere, perform impossible maneuvers, and then vanish just as quickly as they had arrived. This was no coincidence. It was a pattern that suggested something far beyond human technology was at play. But it wasn't just the US that was dealing with these unexplained phenomena. The world was witnessing a rise in strange encounters. Just a month after the Flight 1628 incident, the Kaomaru, a Japanese scientific survey vessel, experienced a similar encounter with an object that appeared on radar but could not be seen by the naked eye. The radar data showed a massive object moving at incredible speeds, far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. The scientists aboard the vessel reported the object's behavior, and once again, the data was confirmed. The object was real. It just couldn't be explained by conventional means. These incidents were only the tip of the iceberg. The more that was revealed about UFOs and UAPs, the clearer it became that something significant was happening, something that was being actively concealed by governments worldwide. But as we move into the modern age, it seems that the truth is starting to emerge. With the release of reports and the increasing number of credible sightings by military personnel, it's clear that we can no longer ignore the existence of UAPs. 1. Of the most alarming aspects of the recent UAP revelations is their proximity to sensitive locations, particularly military and nuclear sites. There have been numerous reports of UFOs hovering near nuclear power plants and military bases, often at times of heightened tension. This raises a troubling question. Are these phenomena a sign of extraterrestrial life, or are they the work of an adversarial power on Earth? And if they are extraterrestrial, what does that mean for the future of humanity? The questions raised by these incidents are profound, and the implications are still being felt today. In conclusion, the story of Flight 1628 is not just about UFOs. It's about the human experience, the fear, the confusion, and the awe that comes with encountering something that challenges everything we know about the world around us. It's about the courage of people like Captain Tarouchi, who saw something that no one could explain and chose to remain silent, despite the overwhelming pressure to speak out. And it's about the growing realization that we are not alone in this universe. As the world begins to confront the reality of UAPs, one thing is clear. The truth is out there, and it may be more extraordinary than we could ever imagine. The key lesson here is simple. Never stop questioning what you think you know. The skies above us are filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Whether they're from another world or from a government secret, the truth has a way of emerging, sometimes when we least expect it. And when it does, it forces us to reconsider everything we thought was possible. As we close the chapter on the Flight 1628 encounter, it's essential to step back and reflect on the bigger picture, one that stretches far beyond a single aircraft or an isolated UFO encounter. What's been revealed through the 1986 incident is just a small piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle. For decades, UFOs, or as they are now more commonly called, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, have been a taboo subject. Governments, scientists, and the media often laughed it off, dismissing it as fanciful imagination or hoaxes. But with increasing sightings, military confirmations, and even government acknowledgements, the reality of these phenomena is becoming impossible to ignore. And for those who had the courage to speak up, like John Callahan, Captain Tarouchi, and the brave crew of Flight 1628, we now see that these mysteries may be far more pressing and far more dangerous than we ever imagined. While Flight 1628's story is one of the most well-known, it's not an isolated event. Over the years, there have been countless reports from pilots, military personnel, and civilians, all of whom have encountered mysterious objects that seem to defy the laws of physics. The US government may have tried to silence these reports for years, but as more and more information leaks out, the truth becomes undeniable. From military radar data to first-hand accounts, the question is no longer whether these phenomena are real, but what exactly they are and what they want. Perhaps one of the most chilling aspects of these encounters is the connection between UFOs and sensitive military sites, particularly nuclear facilities. As recently as 2021, the US government acknowledged that UAPs had been seen near military bases and nuclear facilities on multiple occasions. In fact, there have been numerous reports of UFOs hovering near missile silos, performing maneuvers that no known human-made craft could replicate. Some believe that these objects might be monitoring our nuclear weapons, either to assess our capabilities or to send a warning. Others wonder if these sightings are a sign of something more ominous, a possible extraterrestrial presence, watching us, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. While the theories about the origins of these phenomena range from extraterrestrial life to advanced human military technology, one thing is certain: we're no longer in a place where we can simply dismiss these sightings as the product of overactive imaginations. The US government's 2021 UAP report, which investigated 144 sightings between 2004 and 2021, revealed something startling. Of those 144 cases, only one was identified as a balloon. The other 143 cases remain unexplained. What's even more shocking is that in 18 instances, these UAPs displayed flight characteristics that violate the known laws of physics. They exhibited speeds, maneuvers, and capabilities far beyond anything that modern science could explain. This is a monumental admission from a government that has spent decades denying the existence of these phenomena. This revelation from the government has opened up a floodgate of questions. What do these UAPs want? Are they simply observing us, or do they have a purpose? And if they do have a purpose, are we prepared for it? These questions have haunted experts, pilots, and government officials for years, but it seems that we are finally beginning to scratch the surface of the truth. What's clear, however, is that we are not alone. Whether the UAPs come from another world or another government, their presence suggests that humanity is on the brink of discovering something far bigger than ourselves. But the question still remains. What's next? Where do we go from here? We are now at a critical juncture in our understanding of the universe. For years we've wondered if we are alone in the cosmos. The revelations surrounding UAPs suggest that we are not. In fact, the truth is likely far more complex and challenging than we ever imagined. It's possible that the truth about UFOs has been hidden for a reason that may not be immediately clear, but one that may become apparent as we continue to explore the stars. As new technology emerges and more people speak out, we may soon learn just how deep the mystery runs. For now, all we can do is keep asking the questions, keep searching for answers, and most importantly, stay open to the possibilities. Whether the UAPs are a sign of extraterrestrial life, advanced military technology, or something else entirely, they represent a profound shift in our understanding of the world around us. As we continue to explore the unknown, one thing is certain: we have only just begun to scratch the surface of a much bigger mystery. The Flight 1628 incident is a powerful reminder that sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. It forces us to confront our deepest assumptions about reality and the universe. And as we learn more about UAPs and the people who have witnessed them firsthand, we begin to see the patterns that suggest we are not alone, and we may never have. Ben, as we close today's story, we leave you with one final thought. What does it all mean for the future of humanity? Will we remain in the dark, forever questioning what we don't understand? Or will we embrace the unknown, ready to face whatever revelations await us? The truth is out there, and it's up to us to seek it out. But as we look up at the night sky, one thing becomes clear. The mysteries of the universe are vast, and we have only begun to uncover what lies beyond. As we come to the final leg of our journey into the strange and unexplained, it's crucial to reflect on the implications of what we've uncovered. What happened during the encounter of Flight 1628 was not a one-off event, but part of a much larger and deeper mystery that continues to unfold. From military radar systems tracking strange objects to the US government's reluctant admission that UAPs are real, we find ourselves standing on the precipice of a new era in our understanding of the universe. This isn't just about UFO sightings. It's about confronting the very nature of our existence and our place in a world, in a universe that's far larger and more complex than we can fully comprehend. The story of Flight 1628 serves as a critical turning point in this ongoing saga. Captain Tarouchi, First Officer Tipuji, and Flight Engineer Yoshio Tsukuba saw something that day that most people can't even begin to fathom. They weren't just witnessing lights in the sky. They were facing something that defied all logic and physics. The US government too saw the evidence: radar data, radio transmissions, and sketches from the flight crew, but instead of acknowledging the truth, they buried it under layers of secrecy and misinformation. But despite their efforts, the truth never truly disappeared. It's been slowly emerging piece by piece over the years. And now in 2021, the US government was finally forced to come clean, releasing a report that confirmed what many had already suspected. UAPs are real, and they're far beyond our current understanding. This wasn't just a case of a few strange objects in the sky. These UAPs were demonstrating characteristics that defy physics: impossible speeds, sudden changes in direction, and acceleration that no known aircraft can achieve. For the first time, the government acknowledged the reality of these phenomena and the fact that they might pose a national security risk. But the question remains, what are they, and what do they want? We're now at a crossroads. Governments around the world are beginning to acknowledge the reality of UAPs, but the question still lingers. Are they of extraterrestrial origin, or are they the result of a highly advanced technology that we have yet to fully understand? Sightings of UAPs near military bases and nuclear facilities suggest that these phenomena are not just random occurrences. They may be deliberate, and they may be watching us. Some experts believe that UAPs are monitoring our nuclear capabilities, a chilling thought given the destructive power of nuclear weapons. Are these objects warning us, observing us? Or is there something else at play here, something even more ominous? While the idea of extraterrestrial life seems far-fetched to some, it's becoming harder to ignore the possibility that we are not alone in the universe. The UAPs we're seeing are not just unexplained anomalies. They are tangible, physical, objects that seem to come from somewhere beyond our comprehension. They are performing maneuvers that are impossible for any known aircraft, and they're showing up in places of great significance, places like nuclear facilities, military bases, and airspace where highly sensitive activities are taking place. The implications are vast and troubling. If these objects are of extraterrestrial origin, what does that mean for humanity? What happens when we finally make contact with an intelligence far more advanced than our own? This question brings us back to Flight 1628. The encounter of that flight wasn't just a moment of strange lights in the sky. It was a catalyst for a deeper understanding of the world we live in. For Captain Tarouchi and his crew, it was a moment that shattered their perception of reality. For the rest of the world, it was the beginning of an awakening. As more and more encounters like these are reported, it becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss them as coincidences or misunderstandings. The evidence is clear. We are facing something beyond our current understanding, and it's time for humanity to confront that reality. The release of the 2021 UAP report confirmed something we've all known on some level. These phenomena are real. They're here and they're not going away. The US government's acknowledgement of UAPs is just the beginning. As more data is collected and more encounters are reported, the truth will continue to emerge. But this truth is not just about UFOs. It's about our place in the universe. It's about the realization that we may not be the only intelligent beings in the cosmos, and that we may not be in control of what happens next. As we look to the future, it's important to ask ourselves how we, as a society, are going to respond to this new reality. Are we going to continue to bury our heads in the sand, dismissing these phenomena as fantasy? Or are we going to embrace the unknown, ready to face whatever comes next? The truth is out there, and it's more complicated and mysterious than we could have ever imagined. But as we continue to explore the stars and the vast unknowns of our own planet, one thing is clear. There's far more to this story than we can even begin to comprehend. So, as we close today's exploration, take a moment to think about the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. The next time you look up at the sky, ask yourself, what's out there? What do we not know? And what are we yet to discover? The universe is vast, and we are just beginning to scratch the surface of what lies beyond. The questions raised by Flight 1628 and countless other encounters remind us that the truth is out there, waiting for us to uncover it. And while the answers may be elusive, one thing is certain: humanity's search for the truth has only just begun. What we discover next could change everything.